Now with reaction and a further discussion of the 9/11 report, I'm joined in studio by Cohen, national security expert, former member of the Israeli Special Forces, and founder of Cherry's Covert Ops Apparel. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so should these pages in this 9/11 report be released?
I think that they're going to get released whether we like it or not. And I think that the reaction is going to eventually fade away. And I think that we're going to go back to business as usual, fighting ISIS and offshoots of ISIS. And look, there's people who don't want this report to come out. There was a reason why they buried it. The argument is pretty clear. That there's safeguards that they feel need to be protected, which I completely understand. And the other side is, well, what are we covering? But at the end of the day, it's not going to continue to file down the nails of the terror threat. Even if they do end up coming to whatever conclusion they get to, I don't think it's going to null the terror problem in the macro picture. So it's kind of where I come out.
How much juice does Saudi Arabia have in Washington, D.C. right now?
Well, I think they have less than they used to. I think that we are still heavily dependent on Saudi Arabia for oil, and until Tesla comes out with cars that everybody can afford and we completely make oil 100% obsolete, where we can put that section of the Near East to bed in terms of our reliance on them, there's always going to be a tremendous amount of influence because we're just not there technologically. But I think that we rely less on them as we used to. When we first started off on the tip of the war against terror, there was a very strong relationship between the Saudis and the Americans. And I'm afraid that there may have been a connection between Saudi Arabia and the 9/11 attackers. But again, it doesn't necessarily translate to any victories on terror, whether the report comes out or not.
If that comes out in the report, people are going to go nuts. People are going to demand that we take some sort of action against Saudi Arabia. What's the next step? What's plan B if that happens and people rip their hair out?
Well, you know, we're Americans. We go nuts. We like to go nuts. We flare up and we calm down. We have the greatest, collective amnesia in the world. We're able to just forget. Information flows so quickly these days that it's almost forgotten before it even got realized.
I'm sorry. What did you just say?
I said information. See, so the point is that there will be a flare-up, and in the risk management game, that's a temporary red flag, and then it's going to go away. And again, it's not going to affect the hundreds, if not thousands, of special operations forces, which I'm sure we'll talk about, who are operating abroad right now, training, our counterparts in Syria to be able to take on ISIS. There will be a flare-up. It'll go away. It'll calm down. Unfortunately, we're not going to have as good of a relationship with Saudi Arabia if the report does come out. But for the proxy war that we're looking at right now between Iran and Saudi Arabia, we definitely want to be as close as we can with the Saudis, because Iran is in a very dangerous place right now, and we have to be careful not to completely alienate our allies in that region.
All right, so should Americans be able to sue Saudi Arabia if they were complicit, if they participated in the 2001 terror attacks? Because I know Gloria Allred's already burning the phone lines.
I don't think are we going to be able to stop Americans from being able to go after the Saudi government legally? I mean, we have the greatest legal system in the world here. The question is how many lawsuits can the courts handle once that information gets released? Can we stop them? Absolutely not. Do the family members who were seeking retribution for the loss of the 3,000 loved ones in those attacks, do they have the right to? Absolutely. How far are those cases going to get? What's that going to translate to? I don't know if it's going to translate to much, but whatever gives them closure, I say take it. We all saw those bodies coming out those windows. I mean, that was absolutely one of the most horrible days in the history of modern warfare. And they deserve to have whatever retribution they can get. It's obviously going to turn into a monster legal mess, but let them go. I say let them go after him.
I just spoke to Senator Bob Graham, former Senator Graham of Florida, who said that us running interference for the Saudis helped organizations like ISIS jump out and create the havoc that they've created. He said that they helped create al-qaeda back in the day. Do you think that's true?
I do. I think that there's definitely some relevance to what the senator was saying. But I also think that the Americans and the leadership at the time going into this modern chapter in the war on terror post 9/11, if I may be honest, really didn't know what the heck they were doing. And that's the truth. And the reason why is because they didn't have a lot of experience dealing with terrorism. Statistically, they were coming off the Vietnam War. It had been 30, 35, 40 years since the Americans had seen combat, and terrorism had been very few. Terror attacks had been very few and far between. You had the SS Cole that was hit. But, America's a 14-year-old teenager going through security puberty. That's the reality of the war right now. So a lot of mistakes were made. A lot of mistakes continue to be made. It's not a science. Counterterrorism is more of an art form, if you will. So I don't disagree with them, and I think but I think there's going to be a lot more improvement, and we're seeing improvement. ISIS is dwindling, it's diminishing. We're playing offense and defense at this point right now, and I think that we're starting to feel the effects of it. But I also think that everybody in this country knows that we're still wide open, and that we have to stop being as PC as we are, politically correct as we are being right now in terms of our security. Because if we don't take a realistic, behavioral-based approach at how we deal with terrorism here, then something will happen because this country's wide open.
Who did the Saudis want in the White House in January of 2017?
Whoever's going to buy the most oil. Whoever's going to move those tankers. Yeah, I don't think the Saudis are as happy with the Obama administration. I think that they're obviously going to be happier with a.
But if he vetoes this legislation that would allow people to sue them, that's got to make them happy.
It's definitely going to make them happier, but at the end of the day, the Saudis are reliant. Their wealth is directly correlated with the amount of oil that we purchase and consume here. We are the largest consumer nation in the world when it comes to that oil. We love our cars. We love our 72 Chevelles. We love to make noise. You know, and I think at the end of the day, whichever body or whichever government ends up coming into place that's going to purchase the most amount of oil from them, we have an idea who that is going to be the happiest, because at the end of the day, with terrorism, people forget this, it just comes down to dollars. Whoever's got the money controls these organized crime gangs who then put these Islamic fundamentalists in place and allow them to carry out their mishmash. People end up getting killed, but it's really about money and dollars. So the less we become dependent on that oil, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
How do you think a President Trump would play in the sandbox with the Saudis?
I think Trump is like the American dream, like Ice Cube said. You know, he's just doing what everyone else wishes they could do. He says what he wants to say. Sometimes he acts like a baby. The other times he's on point when he says countries like Saudi Arabia, they just need to have their legs cut out from underneath them, so that we're getting a bad deal with those types of countries. You know, he's a smart guy. He's a PR master. He understands how to play this election. Is he going to get elected? I don't know. But how would he? I think that he would do whatever he can to cut the legs out of the Saudi ability to be able to continue to move oil to this country from purely a deal perspective. He sees it as a bad deal, and that gets him ticking. And then I think that he also is relating and speaking to a certain demographic of the population that just in general doesn't like the concept of having this relationship with Saudi Arabia. There's a contingent to this country that's just like, let's keep them away from us, and yeah, let's get on our own. But that means we've got to make some big plays in terms of our technological developments, and again, we're going through puberty right now. So this whole thing is open to be played out.
Do you think that's a question a lot of foreign heads of state are asking themselves right now?
I think the foreign heads of states are asking a lot of questions right now. I think that's one of hundreds that they're asking right now. Our State Department is watching patiently and waiting, but yes, I do think that's one of the questions that they're probably throwing around.
Were the Bushes too close to Saudi Arabia?
They probably were. I don't think it's a big secret that the Bushes, you know, in light of trying to do what was best for the country to a certain extent, I don't think anybody's denying that there was pocket lining happening and that there was money being made and that war is a business. It is a business, and it's been a business since World War I all the way through to Pearl Harbor. I do think that they were too close to them. I think that the world knows that they were too close to them, and that there was a lot of deals that were made at the time. And I don't think it's the Bush's fault. I think it's the status of our country in relation to how it's run in terms of businesses leading our well-being. And that's again, a massive macro picture adjustment that needs to be made. And that's what's interesting about Donald Trump also. He's not afraid to call that out. That's what's interesting about Bernie. Bernie's not interested or not afraid to jump in there and call that out as well. And I think that there's some refreshing that's happening on the Google page of this country. And it's going to be interesting to see how it opens up and continues to unfold.
All right, Aaron, you get the last word.
Just good to see you. I appreciate your time. The questions are great.
Thanks so much for coming in.
I appreciate it.